Welcome to the Rotary Time Show, a public service program presented by Rotary District 7610. On our programs, we talk with Rotarians and community leaders and discuss how Rotary International builds partnerships to support local, national, and world communities. I am your host, Rotarian Dr. Deborah Jackson from the Rotary Club of McLean, Virginia. Rotary International, with its unwavering commitment to addressing global issues, along with service and community development, has a scholarship program that is far-reaching. It's administered within each Rotary district and provides applying scholars with an opportunity to pursue graduate-level studies abroad at one of Rotary's partnering universities. Joining me remotely today is Rotarian Dr. Christopher Elliott, who is the new chairman of the District 76 Global Grant Scholarship Committee. Welcome, Chair Elliott, to the Rotary Time Show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Jackson. Thrilled to be here today.
Oh, we're just so happy. I had an opportunity to serve with you on the scholarship committee, and we're so impressed with the kinds of things that the scholarship offers our young people that's going to support our world for many, many, many years to come. So I'm delighted to have you on here on the show so that others who are viewing our show will be able to hear and learn more about what you're doing and what the scholarship is doing. So let's get started. But before we do that, I want the audience to learn more about Dr. Christopher Elliott. Tell us about your background, where you're from, your career path, where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chris Elliott, and I've been in higher education for about 25 years. And through that time, I've spent time at several different universities. I earned my PhD in education, and that PhD brought me to Arizona and Delaware, and through Pennsylvania, and now to Virginia. So I've been at University of Virginia now for 19 years. I'm currently serving as the Assistant Dean for Academic and Faculty Affairs at the McIntire School of Commerce at UVA here in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you're my partner, I guess, in crime. I, too, have a doctorate in education. So, I mean, what a commitment we make to the world. So thank you for your service at the University of Virginia. Tell us about your journey to Rotary. How did you get involved with Rotary? And specifically, how did you get to the Rotary Club of Charlottesville?
Sure. I had grandfathers that were involved in civic service organizations. In particular, Rotarian grandfather who had perfect attendance for 67 straight years. And so that was just something that was part of our family. And so that commitment to service was really important to us as a family. I learned a lot from them and really wanted to continue that on. And so I tried out Rotary wanted to try it for a couple of years, and here I am 12 years later. I've served as past president in the Charlottesville Rotary Club and had a couple different roles across our local area. So that important commitment to service, I think, has sort of meant a lot to me, and it's really been an important part of what I do here in Charlottesville. I've been in Charlottesville for 19 years, so joined Rotary a couple of years after moving to town, and thought I found a good place. There are 3 different clubs in the Charlottesville-Albemarle area, and so we've got a lot of great Rotarians who are doing some interesting work and leaders in the community across this whole region, really.
Oh, wonderful. We're glad that you found your way here, and we're honored that your grandparents, well, you said 2 grandfathers, were also involved. That's something to be proud of. So now let's talk about the scholarship program. Can you give us an overview of the Rotary Foundation program and its objectives?
Sure. Yeah, so this scholarship, it's called the Rotary Global Grant Scholarship, and it provides significant scholarship to fund graduate study outside of the United States in one of Rotary's 7 areas of focus. So in recent years, I'll say the scholarship has awarded $40,000 for each recipient. And simply put, I think we're thrilled and eager to fund young people who are going to make a difference in our world in the areas that we think are most critical for humanity to thrive.
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of the scholarship in a nutshell. It is a $40,000 scholarship. We have offered several over the last 12 years since we've been offering it here in District 7610.
That's wonderful. So what are the qualities or characteristics that when you think about an outstanding candidate, what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, so there's some minimum qualifications, first of all, and then there are really some criteria that we use as selection criteria. So first of all, those minimum qualifications, they have to be a student or a resident within District 7610. So we know that there are 4 universities within our district, and so you can be a student within one of those 4 universities, or you can have a permanent residence here in the district. So whether that's your home, your family's home, but some way of residing here in the district. That's sort of first minimum qualification. You have to complete a degree by May of this year. So the May of the year of your application, you have to complete that degree so that you can pursue graduate study abroad in the next academic year. So, and that degree as an undergraduate or maybe even a master's has to be adequate to prepare you for your chosen graduate study. So we want to make sure that people are going to be successful in their graduate programs. And so that is an important part. And then finally, there's a language proficiency. If you're studying in a country that doesn't speak English, we wanted to make sure that you have language proficiency to be able to complete that degree, unless your graduate degree program is taught in English at a non-English speaking country.
Gotcha.
So those are the minimum qualifications. The criteria overall that we look for are really the alignment with the Rotary area of focus, an awareness of the impact, kind of community and service impact of your work, an earnest commitment to service overall, really a lifetime of service, leadership skills and leadership potential, and sort of a clear through line between what you studied as an undergraduate, your master's program, which you're going to pursue as a graduate student, and then your career, so that there's some sort of a clear through line between those.
How then is the evaluation of a candidate's academic achievement, how does future success, how is that evaluated? Is there
so we accept resumes and transcripts and an application. And so that academic background is proven to us by student writing about it in their narratives, as well as through their academic transcript. If they're studying in a specific area, we want to make sure, let's say they're studying immunology, we want to make sure that they have a basic and life science background to be able to support that and do well in graduate programs. So we have people on the committee who are able to read a transcript and kind of understand that a little bit more. And we make sure that that is something that we prioritize too. We don't want to set people up to not be successful in a graduate program. So that is an important criteria that we look at as a committee.
Gotcha. So describe the role then of community service and leadership, because you mentioned that a minute ago, the role of the two in the selection criteria.
Sure. Yeah, we want to fund community leaders. And so we want to fund people who are going to commit to these areas of focus for a lifetime. And I think some of that is showing a demonstrable commitment to service throughout an undergraduate career or even beyond. And so a lot of our candidates, they've been a part of service organizations. They have started service organizations. They have really shown that they have that commitment already. Because we don't expect that people will sort of adopt that brand new as graduate students. It usually is something that they've already been committed to and want to continue into this next chapter. We also want them to be a part of the Rotary clubs in their host countries. And so if they're going to study in South Africa, they would join a Rotary club essentially there. They would be sponsored by a host country club and then often be invited to those club meetings too. And so they're channels to be able to be of service while you're pursuing your graduate study. And ideally, that also just continues to lend itself to committing to a lifetime of service and being Rotarians after graduation with this program as well.
Perfect. You mentioned that there are locations that they can identify to select to participate in. Where are those universities located?
Oh, we actually don't restrict by university.
So
the criteria is that you can study anywhere outside of the United States.
Okay, anywhere.
And that's a worldwide. Rotary is an international organization, and so this scholarship is available to anybody. If you're an applicant from Korea, you can study anywhere outside of Korea. And so that's really the only criteria geographically. We don't have a specific number of universities that we commit to. We want to make sure that that is wide open for students. There's a Rotary Peace Fellowship that does have some very specific universities, but that's outside of the Global Grant Scholarship. So that's another funding channel for students that are interested in kind of peace and conflict resolution. But that's sort of an allied scholarship, let's call that.
Gotcha. So they're very different. Well, I'm glad that I asked that question because there is they're thinking that those are the schools that these kids are applying, but you're saying they're applying to any school that they choose to attend.
Any school outside of the United States.
All
That's
right.
right.
That's perfect. How does the committee ensure diversity and inclusion is in the selection process?
Yeah. So I think an important part of our process is just ensuring that we have an equitable process. And we do that through some recorded information sessions. We want to make sure that all candidates have access to the same information, and that's not separated out by those who had access to advising, for example. And so we put all those details on our website, and that website has the recorded information session. It has slides, and those two different pieces of information have our guidance for how we recommend that students complete the application. For example, we distribute application materials also to all 4 of the universities within our district that we know of. For District 7610, that is University of Virginia, it's Mary Washington, George Mason, and Marymount University as the 4 major research universities that are here in the district. And so all those schools have access to the same materials. We send it essentially through the offices that support scholars and students who are pursuing international study after graduation. So I will say, though, that our process is only as good as our outreach. And Rotary members are really key to ensuring that our applicants are both outstanding and our processes are very inclusive as well.
Gotcha. Are the clubs involved in the process at all?
Definitely. So our district receives all of its nominations from clubs. And so we cannot receive any applications that don't already go to a club. And so any of the clubs within our district are eligible to nominate. We send the materials out through newsletters and make sure that all the clubs are aware of deadlines as they're approaching. And so anybody can receive an application, and then those applications are reviewed by clubs first, vetted, and then sent on as nominees to the district. So the clubs actually play a really critical part in this whole selection process.
Perfect. Good to hear. The Rotary Foundation Scholarship, how does that align with Rotary's values, international values and mission?
Sure. Yeah. So Rotary does establish they have 7 areas of focus. And so we make sure that we align with those also. So all of our candidates have to choose which area of focus they're interested in studying around. And so they have to choose promoting peace, fighting disease, clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, protecting the environment, number 7, growing local economies.
There you go.
So they have to choose one of those 7 in their application and make sure that they're writing about how that graduate program supports that specific area of focus. So that actually, we cannot underestimate how important that one alignment piece is. And we say that in all of our information session and materials, that choosing one area of focus is important, and making sure that your graduate program aligns with that is also very important, because that helps to make sure that you will be successful as a Rotary Global Scholar moving forward.
Perfect, and thank you. We're going to take a short break and be right back and talk more with Chair Elliott regarding the Global Scholarship Program. Please stay with us.
We are this close.
We're this close.
We are this close
Of uncertainty.
to making history.
This close to changing the world.
We are this close.
This close to making sure no child suffers a crippling disease.
Ever again. This close
We are this close to ending polio.
ending polio.
All we need is you.
This close.
If we don't act now, we may lose this chance forever. Help Rotary make history at endpolionow.org.
Welcome back to the Rotary Times. We're here talking with Rotarian Dr. Christopher Elliott, the chairman of District 7610 Global Grant Scholarship Committee. Chair, you've just given us some amazing information about how one can go about the process. Let's talk about maybe a recipient now of the process, someone that you have these memorable thoughts about. Can you recall 1 or 2 people?
I can recall 12 people, because they've all been really memorable, I have to admit. And the topics that these students are studying are incredible. And so it's violence prevention in different regions, and addressing eating disorders with youngsters in a certain region. One particular student went to University of Cambridge and joined a cancer lab, and she wanted to study cancer cells and how they grow and develop. And so she was studying that very specifically in mitochondrial DNA. And the energy and passion that she had in studying mitochondrial DNA was absolutely spectacular. And I know that she came and talked to our Rotary Club several times, and our members were blown away by her every time, and that she could be so very specific in her scientific research and know how that applies to the world and its impact long term was just really inspiring. And so we see that from every single one of our scholars, everybody that receives the funds. This is a life-changing scholarship, and to be able to pursue what is a transformative graduate program to sort of launch a career is just an outstanding opportunity, and the kind of hopefulness that these young people have is really just inspiring, I think, for all Rotarians. So I'm thrilled to be able to talk about this, and I think we have the best committee around, just because we get to meet these incredible people who are really dead set on changing the world and improving things for the better.
Chair Elliott, you couldn't have said it better. You've inspired me just sitting here listening, because it is our future. And to hear from these young people and the impact that they will make on the world, it's just amazing. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on some of those recipients. I can't wait for them to come on back home and join maybe some of our clubs. It'd be wonderful. What advice would you give applicants to enhance their chances of being selected for the scholarship?
Yeah, I think maybe a combination of alignment and intrigue. So alignment, first of all, we've talked about this already, but it really is quite important that your through line is clear, that your academic pursuits align with your career interests, and all of those really align with Rotary's areas of focus. So kind of both your kind of longitudinal through line as well as your connection to Rotary. So I think those are important alignment pieces. And intrigue is really just that there's something a little bit different about your application, and so it doesn't feel like it's just about your academic pursuit, but it talks about you as an individual and how you bring something unique to the table, and that's a story that we're all going to want to tell. And when we have you in front of us to talk to our Rotary clubs, that's what people walk away with hearing is that distinctness, what you bring to the table that's a little different, and we know that that's exciting too, because you're going to bring something as a young Rotarian that we don't necessarily already have in our clubs.
Right. How does the committee assess the candidate's commitment to the ideals of service above self? Because you've mentioned that on several occasions, that it is about service. Yeah,
it is. And I think that might be difficult for some candidates to articulate because they haven't necessarily had to in the past. And so asking them to talk about that service, they usually talk about, well, I was involved in this club in high school. This is one that I founded in college. This is one that I've stayed committed to. So it's really more about their resume line items. And we're interested more in both those resume pieces. Sure, that's interesting, but then why is that meaningful for you? So what does that service do for you? What does that service, how does that commitment sort of continue to motivate you? And so I think that just becomes a little bit of a distinction, as opposed to just recounting what's on your resume. You can sort of talk about, and this is what it means to me. Like I talked in the beginning, I serve in some ways because my family committed that to me and for me, and made sure that was important as I was growing up. And so I still serve and get a little bit of satisfaction of that because it reminds me of my grandfathers. And that means a lot to me, especially now that they're passed. And so I continue to bring their memory into the service work that I do. And some of them one of them was on the board of education in Delaware, and I'm in education, and so we do some similar things. And so I love to hear that from candidates, that they're doing the work that they're doing because of a mentor or a family member or their parents or whoever that might be. But what inspires you to do that service and commit to that for a lifetime?
How has the program evolved over time? Or have there been any changes or improvements?
No, absolutely, there have been. Well, so Rotary Global Grant Scholarship has only been around since about 2013 in Rotary International. This is a continuation of a program that was called the Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarships that were established in 1947. 1947, the world looked a little different. And so those scholarships were focused on international understanding and goodwill ambassadors. So they were called ambassadorial scholarships because they wanted to send, we as Rotary International wanted to send people around the world as sort of goodwill ambassadors to different countries to present about the United States and to bring what they learned back to the US and present to Rotary clubs here. So there was definitely an international understanding component. And that scholarship program ran for 66 years, from 1947 through 2013. So when the world has changed a bit in that time. And so in 2013, Rotary International decided that we are much more interconnected now. Maybe that international understanding piece should look a little different. And Rotary International had also established their areas of focus. At the time, it was 5 and then 6 areas of focus for Rotary International. Now it's 7. And so now that the scholarships are sort of wrapped into that commitment for Rotary International to focus on those 7 areas. And what used to be that what was more, obviously we still need some goodwill around the world, and international understanding is always still quite important. The world desperately needed those in the 1940s and 50s. I would say we still kind of desperately need those, but the focus of the scholarship is a little bit different now, and it aligns a little bit more with the areas of focus for Rotary International.
Wonderful. What does the role of the interview process, how does that fit into the structure of the whole initiative?
Sure. Yeah. So the stages of the process so that students apply directly to a Rotary club. The club sometimes does an interview themselves. They vet all of their applicants. And so if they receive multiple applicants, they can send multiple forward. Sometimes they're vetting and only sending 1 or 2 forward, but they're sending forward the most qualified candidates that come to them. And so we as a district don't dictate that for clubs. Clubs can decide what their internal process looks like. And then we receive the applications, the nominations from each club at the district level. The district then invites the candidates to interview. And that interview is a brief chance for the committee to get to know those candidates. I would say it's quite important. And it's brief, but quite important. So we have 15 to 18 minutes with each candidate. And they're able to talk a little bit about their motivation and how their applications align, and that sort of is a summary of their candidacy, I would say. And so it's an important part of the process. We review all the application materials that are submitted, and then additionally that interview process, and then we make a decision as a local selection or a district selection committee. We have just today notified our candidates. And so we are thrilled to be able to, again, this is the best part of my role, is I get to tell people that they're receiving a scholarship to pursue what is a graduate program that they've dreamed about for years. And so this is just a fantastic opportunity for students, and we're looking forward to seeing how they thrive with the scholarship.
Oh, wow, that is, I'm sure that's exciting. I'm sure when you made that call, you were just as excited as the candidates were on the other end to receive that information in their families. So
Absolutely.
That's great to hear. So let's go back to even the process the committee goes through. How does the committee balance the academic part of it with the candidates' potential for contributing to their community or society? You know, how does that work out to make sure that this piece happens?
Yeah, I would say it has to be a balance too. And that balance is such that you can't just be a really brilliant individual. And so just having a very strong academic transcript is not enough. In our selection process, you do need to have that leadership skill or potential for leadership. All the other pieces that we had discussed already. And so being well-rounded in that way is a really important part of our process. And we want to make sure that we are, again, funding the next generation of community leaders.
Absolutely.
And so that doesn't come with just an academic background. That is also, an ability to communicate and to be able to talk with individuals and rally support for causes that we all care about. There are a lot of important pieces to that scenario.
Okay, the final question, and we don't have a lot of time remaining, but how does the committee or stay engaged with or support candidates as they move through the program?
We try to, as much as we can. We try to have the scholars, especially if they're local, to come back to clubs and present on their work. And oftentimes that happens right at the end, conclusion of their graduate program. So they'll probably come home, especially if they're from this district. are living permanent resident in this district they'll come back home to their family's home, and they'll present to the Rotary Club that sponsored them, for example. So we always love to hear how that goes for them, and they always talk about the great connections and the good meals that they get from Rotary clubs internationally. So that's always an outstanding connection to hear about, and super motivating for us as Rotarians to continue to leverage that worldwide network that we have.
That's interesting. You know, I've done a number of interviews about Rotary, and food always comes up. It's even coming up in the nationals. We are about a good meal, and fellowship. So
You got it.
That is wonderful. Chair Elliott, I want to thank you for saying yes to the ask to come today. And I hope you'll come back again soon and talk about the next phase of the process. Just if we can use this to help others learn more about the grants, I would love to have you back again.
I'd be glad to.
Great.
Thanks so much for your time, Dr. Jackson.
You got it. And we'll look forward to seeing you again. For the
Cheers.
Rotary Times program, I am your host, Rotarian Dr. Deborah Jackson from the Rotary Club of McLean, Virginia. You're welcome to join us at a Rotary Club in your area for either breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a service project. You can find a club near you by looking us up on the internet. Many clubs are hosting meetings in person, virtually, or in some hybrid format. You only need to look us up for details. Remember, our time is your time, and it's time well spent. Please join us for our next program as we continue to celebrate Rotary's 117 years of service above self.